Hello, everyone. Welcome to MCD Live's new session today, and I'm back again. They're hosting today's session, and I'm so glad to have all of you joining today, and for those who will be watching us. So, today, the topic of our session is going to be navigating life transitions. We discussed grief last week. We touched a little bit on the concept of grieving, and for what grief basically means for a lot of us, right? So today we will be talking about life transitions, in general, not just particularly grief, and because whether life transitions are positive or negative, whether it's a loss or even a gain, if you're a new parent or if you are moving for a new job, all of these things are like life transitions that do impact you internally, your mind, and the way you view the world. And I'm so glad to have you all here today so we can discuss this in detail. So, before we get into the details of things, I would like to have a question for you. Have you ever looked at your own life and you realized that every single thing in your life has changed, yet you still feel like you are the same person? Like you haven't changed. Or maybe your life is exactly the same on the outside, but internally you are different, right? It could be either of the scenarios, right? That things around you may have changed, but you feel like you are the same person as you were 20 years back. And things around you may not have changed a lot, but you internally have changed. And this is the fun fact about the fascinating fact or the nature of life transitions. And whenever we hear about the word transition, we often just either think about something that may be negative, or maybe a transition that involves reaching a milestone, like getting married, becoming a parent, and gaining a degree, changing a career, right? And all of these things, they all are like obvious kind of transitions that may be happening in your life. Now, there are some transitions that happen without an external change of event, right? Perhaps you have stopped recognizing who you are. Maybe you don't have, maybe the friendships that you had 2 years ago, where you were so involved that they felt like home for you. You are not friends with those people anymore, right? Your priorities have shifted after marriage or becoming a parent. That is also one form of psychological or social transition and psychosocial transition. When you place your priorities on the basis of what is good and bad for your child, right? Or maybe you have experienced something traumatic or upsetting that has caused a change inside you. Maybe you have stopped trusting people. Maybe you don't believe in people talking about anything. You don't trust people's word on their face value, right? These are also transitions. These are psychological transitions, right? Now, as I told you in our one of our sessions, that we have the innate tendency to criticize ourselves, like no matter what happens. So even when these transitions happen, we have a lot of questions for ourselves. So again, life transitions, whether they are social, whether they are psychological or psychosocial, they are all at the same time a part of your life. And to fully navigate through all of these changes, it's very important to keep in mind a few concepts that we will be learning about today. So, before we begin, like always, very important, we shall start off with a mindfulness activity. And today, again, I would like you all to sit comfortably and try to sit comfortably, whether you are sitting in your room, or you are sitting outside, or you are lying down. Just place yourself in a comfortable position and try to bring your hands to a place, to a position where you can just rest them completely. You're not holding anything in your hands, just let your hands loose. Leave your feet to rest on the floor, on the ground, or if you're lying on the bed, just try to relax your feet and stretch them and try to leave them loose. By now, your feet are loose. You are not holding anything in your hands. You have placed your hands in a comfortable position and you are not using your hands for any task. And if it feels comfortable for you, if it feels safe for you, try to close your eyes. And if you cannot do so, just try to lower your gaze and just look down. If it doesn't feel safe for you to close your eyes, you can always just lower your gaze and just look down, or try to bring your focus. The primary motive behind closing your eyes is to remove as many visual distractions as possible. And if it feels safe to do so, please do so. And now I would like you all to take one deep breath in through your nose. Hold it in and exhale through your mouth. And that's it. You don't have to take a deep breath again. And just breathe the way you were previously breathing without making any changes in the way you are sitting. Or if you've closed your eyes, you don't have to open them yet. And try to think about a recent transition in your life. Try to bring your mind to that recent transition. It could be a major life transition. It could be a very minor transition. It could be a friendship you just formed and a belief you may have formed, or maybe a friendship that just ended abruptly and you no longer want to be friends. Or maybe it could be a change in your career, maybe absolutely any transition. Even it could be becoming a parent, it could be getting married, even moving away from family in a city, in a new city. Just notice and think about it. Now ask yourself that regarding this transition, what emotions have I been carrying inside of me? What emotions have I been carrying through this transition that I'm not paying too much attention to because I've and I'm avoiding those emotions because I don't want to face them. What are those emotions that I am not able to face? What are those feelings? Am I sad about moving out? Am I worried or nervous about becoming a new parent? What is it? And am I am I resisting this transition? Or am I resisting that uncertainty that this transition has brought in my life? That maybe I may not be able to believe in people anymore because I had a unfortunate breakup of my friendship or a relationship. So I am very upset about it. And now I'm resisting this uncertainty that has been introduced in my life. What is it? Now ask yourself again, can I control absolutely anything outside that exists separate from me in the outside world? Do I have the ability and the control to take into my hands the outcome of what is to happen and what is not supposed to happen? I don't. I only have one thing in my control, and that is to observe what is happening in my mind and just observe it without changing it. I can observe what is going on, and I can definitely calm my nervous system down in the middle of all this chaos. So I'm going to take one final pattern of deep breathing to calm my nervous system. So I'm going to inhale through my nose and exhale from my mouth. Inhale from your nose, exhale from your mouth. Inhale from your nose and exhale from your mouth. So, I'm sure a lot of you may have thought about the life transition that may have occurred in your life, and it could have been absolutely anything. It could just be our way of understanding things or our way of understanding ourselves, right? And sometimes it's not I asked you a question that are you resisting that transition or the uncertainty that is coming with that transition, right? Because whenever there's a transition in your life, there's a psychological adjustment that happens afterwards. You know, if two people are receiving a promotion is a good thing, right? You're getting promoted to a higher role. Now, one of them will be adapting quickly. They may be very excited. They may be enjoying, the idea of being promoted. The other person, on the other hand, may obviously feel scared. They feel anxious, right? Both of these can exist, right? Um, the external event, of course, is identical, but the internal experience of that, the psychological adjustment of that. Now, this transition is not a negative one, right? We have always primarily focused on events and things that are negative and that are contributing to feelings of grief. But today we are going to talk about all life transitions in general. And one positive aspect, even one positive experience, it can feel different to two different people. So the transition causes some psychological changes and adjustments. And the difficult part for it, why do transitions feel difficult? It's because they create some psychological adjustments that are a contributory factor to, you can say, uncertainty. And human beings don't like being uncertain, right? Human beings always, we all want equilibrium, all right? We want our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, our relationships, and our routines, everything to work together. So we have some sort of psychological stability, all right? Now, life transitions interrupt this stability. And when that sense of stability, psychological stability, is interrupted, what do we call that? We call that psychological disequilibrium. Psychological disequilibrium. And if your routine is changing, your relationships are shifting, your confidence may start fluctuating, your emotions may become less predictable, and you may also feel like you're not dealing with the situation in the way you are supposed to. Now, a happy moment that is supposed to make you happy, it feels like you're not dealing with it the way you should, right? Now, it is because your mind is reorganizing itself, right? It is reorganizing. We feel like it is disorganized, or it is not willing to to organize itself. But when things change, when there is a change even in the part of your routine, when there is one change in your daily routine, the other things that are to be followed, all of them, all of those things are, they are to be changed and adjusted because of that one change, right? So a lot of things are happening in your mind, and it does not mean your brain is losing its sanity. Now, so this is something that we need to understand, that feeling psychologically unsettled during a major life transition is actually a healthy response, right? If you're not responding to a change, if you are completely numb, does that sound a healthy approach? Does that sound healthy? It's not healthy. It's a healthy response when you are feeling psychologically unsettled to an unfamiliar reality, an unfamiliar event, right? Now, if I ask you to describe yourself without actually mentioning your profession, we all eventually would describe ourselves using the roles that we have. I may say I'm a clinical psychologist, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter. You may say I'm a husband, I'm a wife, I'm a student, I'm a caregiver, and so and so and so. Now, these identities that we talked about, these are all very stable identities. These make us feel stable. Now, imagine if one of these is changing, right? Now, let's say a wife transitions to becoming a mother and you have a baby, right? What would that do? You will lose that unlimited freedom that you had before to sleep at any given time of the day, any time of the day, or to rest. Or if you are gaining a role in a good company, a multinational company, getting a good job, of course, that requires you to make changes in your routine if you were previously unemployed, right? So these things, of course, bring a lot of changes in your life. And during these transitions, our identity, uh, our identity also enters a period of reconstruction. We start to rebuild a new identity. The old version of ourselves is no longer fully fitting into the reality that we have today. We cannot just be a woman, or a daughter, or just a sister. Then we become a mother as well, and it takes a lot of time to adjust to this reality. A lot of times when if we talk about this primarily brings me to a very, very important example of this, is when postpartum mothers are struggling. And one of the very reason they are struggling is because they are adjusting with the new identity they have gotten. And that is something not many people around them are able to see. because the changes that are happening inside your mind, a life transition. Suddenly, a day before you were just you, and a day later on, you are a mother and you have a baby who is relying on you, you have new responsibilities. So, of course, that does bring a state of unsettlement. So, one another concept that I would also like to touch on is the idea of emotional granularity. Now, it is the how would I simply explain it? It means being able to identify emotions without precision, rather than just using broad labels like I am stressed, I am fine, I am okay. Now, if you are saying that, let's take the same example. If a mother is saying that I am overwhelmed, a lot of people may not understand this around here. So this is one reason why it's so difficult for people to comprehend, because they don't understand the specificity of that situation, right? So if a mother talks about, I'm grieving the loss of my identity, I'm grieving the loss of my freedom, I'm sad um because of how, even though I should be happy, people always struggle that why am I feeling sad when having a baby is supposed to be a good thing, right? But they are grieving something that is much bigger than that state of happiness. That is a change, a transition, a fear. I'm afraid about my responsibilities. I'm lonely because nobody around me is understanding. So research says that people who are actually able to communicate it this way, they have greater emotional granularity. That is what emotional granularity means, that you are able to explain. This was very important for me to share because sometimes being specific about things can actually help you targeting the specific reason you are struggling, right? So people who do have greater emotional granularity, researchers believe that they are better with regulating their emotions and more effective, because when you tell your brain, even your brain, that about a specific thing that's bothering you, then it's able to um, sort things out in a much better way rather than just being general about things. Now, your brain, of course, it's why does all of these things happen? Now, the brain part is a part of your body that is not only reacting to things, it is also predicting things, right? It is also attaching meaning to an expected event, right? So it is not only a reactive organ, it's a predictive machine, it's a predictive organ as well. It predicts absolutely everything you do in your life, in your work, in your education, in your relationships, because this sense of predictability makes you feel safe. It makes you feel stable, especially if those predictions are coming out to be true most of the time, which they, of course, are, because a lot of things in your routine, um, they are definitely predictable. The route that you're going to take to your workplace, the meetings you have to attend. But if something changes, what happens, right? So if you have lived in a house, in the same house for 20 years, you know exactly where the switches are, right? And someday someone changes the furniture, rearranges all the furniture, changes all the buttons, light switches. What will happen? Of course, you won't be just knowing what thing is placed where, right? There's nothing tragic that happened. There's nothing dangerous that happened if someone has rearranged the furniture, but your brain now has to focus. Your brain now has to pay attention to absolutely everything. You cannot rely on the habit of, just moving past a wall and just without looking on the wall, you just turn the light on. We always do that. But if things are rearranged, you would have to look very carefully around you. And this is exactly how life transitions also work in like marriage, like motherhood, parenthood, and even a health diagnosis. What happens is that your brain's prediction just suddenly stops matching reality. And when your brain's prediction is not matching the reality, it is called the prediction error. And this prediction error simply means that there is a mismatch between what your brain expected and what reality actually is. And the greater this mismatch, the greater energy your brain has to invest in updating the internal state. A lot of people, they start developing difficulty in concentration. They have mental fatigue, forgetfulness. So many people have decision paralysis in something as minute as what they have to eat on a particular day. And all of these are result of what? That mismatch that is happening in the brain, that prediction error. And the same thing happens even when there are positive changes. It's not particular to the negative experiences on, right? Now, how can we actually adjust if we talk about um, the neuroscience of it? You know, for a lot of time, researchers actually believe that once we had reached the stage of adulthood, our brain just stops changing. It stops developing. The prefrontal cortex has developed by the age of 25, done, that's it. And nothing is changing afterwards. But that's not true. Of course, it has fully developed by the age of 25, but your brain is, of course, making those changes, transitions continuously. It is not a static organ. Our brain has an amazing ability to reorganize. And by now, all of us must be aware what is the term to describe this change and this ability. We call this ability the neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the ability of our brain to adapt. And adaptability doesn't come from a one-time thing. If you are walking, let's say you have to walk through a forest, and the first time you will walk through it, there won't be a clear path, of course. You have to push through branches and long grass, and it's going to be scary, it's going to be slow, it's going to be uncomfortable. But if there is someone who walks through the same route every day, and if you tell yourself that you will be walking through this route every day, eventually what will happen? A trail will develop, a trail will appear, right? That same path that seemed to be very slow and uncomfortable in the beginning, you see a trail out there appearing. If you do take that route on a regular basis, the walking becomes easier. The traveling becomes easier for you, and our brain works in a similar way. Every repeated thought, every repeated behavior, every repeated emotion, and even a habit, it strengthens those neural pathways. And our brain has to eventually create the new pathways. And during our life transition, the old ones are no longer helpful. They just end and the new ones begin. And it takes time. Every time a person is like, why am I not getting better? Why are things not getting better? It's because the brain takes its due time. You cannot rush a process. So the first step towards that, when you talk about changing and creating new pathways, is to accept. And it comes from the acceptance and commitment therapy as well that we use in our clinic. That it is known as the acceptance and commitment therapy. And the idea behind it is that we have to stop fighting every emotion. We need to stop worrying about every emotion. How do we do that? If you are feeling anxious, then you will start feeling anxious about feeling anxious. If you are feeling sad, you will become angry because you are sad. So, um, the more we try to suppress or the more we try to avoid uncomfortable thoughts and emotion, the more power they will gain. So that is why in one session we also talked about distractions, that distraction is not a healthier way to deal with life transitions and events in our lives. So it's very important to accept, to acknowledge if a thing exists, right? And instead of asking yourself, how do I stop it? How do I stop this from happening? You can ask yourself that, can I let this feeling be and still live my life according to my values? Can I keep living my life without it becoming a hindrance for what I'm doing? So accept. When you accept things, it creates space for you. And in that space, you will have the freedom. You will regain the freedom to choose your next step instead of reacting automatically and abruptly. So accept if there is something going on. Then the next step is to develop CBT based thought reframing if a life event happened that you did not expect, or if it did not go according to your plan, you shouldn't be telling yourself that you have failed and you will never be able to recover from this. You can think of it from this perspective. Number one, you are telling yourself it is painful. That is acceptance. You are telling yourself it is painful. But then you are reframing the next thought. That is, it may also be an opportunity to rethink what I want from my career. It may also be an opportunity to rethink what I want from my relationship. So, reframe your thought. Instead of I am a failure, I can never recover from this, think about it this way. The event is same. The emotional experience becomes different because you are consciously giving it another meaning. Your feelings, your emotions all depend on the meaning that you give to a particular event. Now, of course, not every thought that comes to your mind, every negative thought that comes to your mind, you don't have to replace it with a positive one. You just have to examine your thinking with curiosity, every thought. Replacement is not the goal of CBT. The goal of CBT based thinking is to look at your thoughts from an evidence-based approach. If you have a thought, let's say, again, when you say you are a failure, what is the evidence to support this thought? Is there any tangible evidence to support this thought? Or if there's not, then is there any evidence that challenges this thought? Or am I predicting the future like it is certain? Or am I treating one difficult event or one difficult moment as though it defines my entire life? Am I basing this opinion on the basis of one event? And the and the most important part of this whole evidence-based approach about that one thought. If someone I loved had this thought, if my partner said I don't love myself and I'm a failure and I'll never recover from this, what am I going to tell them? Am I going to tell them that yes, you are a failure? Or am I going to tell them about the things that prove they are not a failure? Right? So once you start developing this thought process, you will be able to weaken negative thought patterns, negative thinking patterns, and strengthen the balanced approach. And you will be able to come into a state of psychological accuracy. And it's not going to force optimism. Of course, there might be thoughts that may not seem that may actually seem to have some evidence behind it, right? But there may be a sort of balance when you are analyzing it and talking about it, right? So these are the two ways you can actually deal with life changes and navigate life changes in a positive way, in a practical way. Number one is to accept things as they are. Accept your emotions instead of distracting yourself or denying them or avoiding them. The second is to view your thoughts, to view your experiences and thoughts and the relationship between them through an evidence-based approach, through a CBT-based approach. These two things can actually help you navigate your life challenges in a much, not challenges, all sorts of transitions, I'm sorry, in a much better way, right? So this is how you can do it. Now, before we end the session today, I want you to do this small exercise if you are able to do it right now or after the session. Um, Draw two circles, right? Because we have talked about locus of control and um, external control, internal control. So by now, I hope some of you might be able to guess what I'm asking you to do. Draw two circles, and in the inner circle, write down something or basically everything that you can control today. It could be your actions, it could be your routine, your words, something you are supposed to do, or your efforts for someone you love, self-care, your sleep, all these things that you can control today. And in the outer circle, write down about other people's choices, the past, the future, the unexpected events, right? All the things that you are not able to control, all the things that you cannot control. So create these two circles. One is the internal locus of control, and the outer circle is the external locus of control. And try to observe those things. That which one is troubling you more? You will notice that the outer circle has things that trouble you more, and it increases your anxiety rather than the inner circle, right? Because when you actually invest your energy in the inner circle, um you will notice that you're actually regaining energy. So it is the external locus of control that is causing more trouble. So try to do this activity. This is definitely a task for all of you. That we draw this, and if you would like to share, please do share it with us as well. So we can call it a day now. If anybody wants to share something, please do so. You can share it in the chat box, and if not, then we can call it a day. I just read your message. I'm so sorry I couldn't do so before. I just read it. Transition has changed me externally, although internally I feel same. Yeah, like it can happen either way, you know? In the beginning, as I discussed, either it's the external changes and no internal changes, or the internal changes and no external reasons to cause that change internally, right? So, absolutely. It's so important to introduce yourself from your heart, limit, or your thought authentic quality proud of, other than your hate that you are waiting in life at this time. Sis pro professional. Yes, exactly. Absolutely right. Very, very well said. If we are accepting the negative thoughts and there is no way out from the situation, what we should do? We are accepting that a negative thought exists. We are accepting that it is painful. Then we came to the CBT part. Is that negative thought? The acceptance part is not that the acceptance that the negative thought is true. You're not accepting that the negative thought is true. You're only accepting that you have a negative thought and that it is causing you pain. Now, let's suppose there was an unhealthy friendship that you may had, right? And it was unhealthy and it broke up. It ended. You broke up in that friendship and it ended abruptly. You did not expect it. Of course, it's making you feel like you're never going to have any friends anymore. You are not going to have friends in your life anymore, and you can never have a good healthy friendship, and you are in a lot of pain. Now a lot of people try to escape that feeling rather than accepting its existence. You when I'm talking about acceptance, I'm not telling you that you have to accept the reality, the thought being true. You are not accepting that this feeling that I may not have any good friendships in the future. It's not true. You are only accepting that this negative thought is existing. It is there. And your next step is to look at this thought from a evidence-based perspective. What is the evidence to support this? Just one unfortunate life event? Am I basing my entire life on the basis of this event? And if there was someone else instead of me, someone who I love, who would say this, how would I respond to them? Am I going to tell them that yes, you are not going to have healthy friendships in your life anymore? You are bound to be a failure in relationships and friendships? No, you will not say that. So you are accepting the thought exists, and at the same time, you are viewing it in a balanced way. You are looking at it not from a black and white perspective that it is true or it is not true. You are looking at it from an evidence-based approach, right? Evidences and approaches. What your evidence is to support it, to be against it, and what your response would have been if it was not you and it was someone else saying it, right? So I hope that answers your question. Sometimes you simply need to process with a non-emotional approach and simply be maybe the chat with a trusted friend. Of course, having a trusted friend around you is so important. So important. Like, it's great if you have a friend to support you in a time like that. But even if there is none, you can always give yourself the time that you require. And because not everybody has a big social circle, so you can just sit with yourself, practice mindfulness, take care of yourself, and be your own biggest friend. Because the love and regard that you need for yourself is greater than absolutely anything that anybody can give you or offer you. So it's very important that I always emphasize it in all the sessions that take out one day out of the week, out of the 7 weeks, whether if you want to spend it to strengthen yourself spiritually, socially, psychologically, but just spend it for yourself without caring about what someone has to offer you or what someone could have done for you if you were there, if they were there for you. Just spend and dedicate one day out of that entire week for your own self. So you are just suggesting that maybe acknowledge that this negative thought is there, yes, and be empathetic to yourself, then apply CBT, view it from an intellectual manner. Exactly, exactly. Accept the existence because a lot of people, they are in a stage of denial, right? And that stage of denial, again, is an unhealthy approach. We are going to definitely learn about the stages of grief one day, and you're also going to understand some defense mechanisms as well, which are, I'm sure if you can, once we learn about them, you will be able to understand how intellectualization is also considered one of the defense mechanisms, but it is a healthy defense mechanism. It is not an unhealthy defense mechanism because you are viewing at a thought, but from a healthy point of view, you are making sense of something rather than just believing it to be a black or white situation. That's not how it works. Black and white thinking is unhealthy. Intellectualization, giving meaning to things from an evidence-based approach, it is a healthy approach. So you should definitely do it that way. So, anybody wants to share anything, or shall we call it a day? Workplace environment. How to deal with negative environment. Of course, when the thank you so much, Vardini. So when the environment is toxic, of course, the best approach is to just disengage from that particular environment. Of course, sometimes that is, most of the time, that's not in it. That's not an option. You cannot just remove yourself from an environment because, especially when it's workplace, you cannot just remove yourself. So what do you do in that particular point? At that particular point, you try to work on your emotional reactions and your emotional regulation. Now, someone you get to know that two colleagues, they are, planning behind you or creating a plan to affect your relationship with the boss or or, or trying to prank you into for something, right? try to Try to regulate yourself. Try to tell yourself that no matter what is going on in the environment, my reactions at the end of the day, they are in my control. As I told you, the internal locus of control and the external locus of control. You cannot control what is happening in the environment, given the situation that you cannot remove yourself from this place. You have to work on the things that you can control. You have to work on your internal state, your internal stability. In one of the sessions, we talked about internal stability and external stability. There may be things externally that are traumatizing for you. And how to remain calm in that is to focus on the things that you can do by pausing, by giving yourself to meditate, by giving yourself the time to meditate, practice mindfulness, take mindful decisions, and of course, keeping yourself safe before absolutely anything. Try to tell your own self in your own mind that regardless of what is happening around me, at least I know myself. I have the power to react. I have the power to withhold my reactions. Nobody can force a reaction out of me, right? Because people do these things actually. They remain toxic so they can bring out a reaction from you. So you have to work on controlling your reactions by being more mindful, by practicing mindfulness. So there are so many mindfulness activities in our program that once you go through every module, you will be able to see it, which is going to help you along the way, right? And practice these mindfulness activities whenever you feel like things are escalating. But if a situation is too toxic, give yourself the space that you need, because self care is above everything else. Your mental well being is above everything else around you, right? So I hope that helps. I think we are just about, yes, we can call it a day now. And I hope to see you all tomorrow in the next session at the same time and the same link with a new topic. So, all of you have a great day ahead. Bye bye.